Hey guys, tonight's story begins with a bucket of water that could double as soup, a family rag that's touched more armpits than saints, and a chamber pot waiting to prove gravity still hates you. You wanted bedtime comfort, but instead, you're about to crawl into straw that smells like betrayal, and that's the good part. But before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. The sun limps across the sky like a tired onion, shedding gold and soft flakes over the thatched roofs and leaning fences. You stand ankle-deep in dust and the vague residue of disappointment, watching the shadows stretch like gossip across the fields. Somewhere, someone's goat sneezes, a child screams. It's unclear whether the two events are related. Probably. You sigh. The day is dying, which means it's time to prepare for the evening ritual of removing the day's shame from your body, or at least smearing it around enough to pretend you tried. You shuffle toward the wash basin with the enthusiasm of someone being dragged to a second sermon. It's dented, cracked along one side, and filled with water the exact color of tea that's been argued with. It was last changed sometime after breakfast, or before. No one's really sure anymore. You dip your finger in. It's cold, not brisk or refreshing, more like the temperature of disapproval. You splash a bit on your face, smear it in a vague circle, and decide that's enough skincare for one lifetime. The basin smells faintly of onion, stronger of feet, and unmistakably of someone's sock. The sock may still be in there. You choose not to investigate. A small insect skitters across the surface, like it's late for a very important drowning. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which makes them dirtier. That, too, is part of the process. Behind you, your youngest sibling is peeling off their shirt, which makes a sound like wet parchment being torn in half. They hop from one foot to the other while yelping about a beetle in their trousers. Your mother, without looking up from her mending, says, "Offer it a prayer and move on." Your father, who has been napping with his eyes open for the past 20 minutes, lets out a slow wheeze that might be agreement. Or indigestion. Hard to say. You glance outside. The last bits of sunlight are melting into the edges of the village like butter that gave up. A dog saunters past, dragging what appears to be someone's sandal. A rooster blinks from a rooftop but declines to comment. A wheelbarrow tips over somewhere, and no one bothers to check. It is, after all, evening, the hour where ambition dies and mediocrity becomes religion. You go to fetch the rag. The rag has no known origin. It has lived in this house longer than 3 of your cousins, and possibly your grandmother. It has cleaned everything from knees to cookware to at least one mysterious stain in the shape of a saint. You wring it out. It drips something that smells like boiled regret. You dab it under your chin, behind your ears, and on the part of your elbow that always feels suspiciously sticky. You do not ask why. There are things better left unexamined, and the human body, especially yours, after sundown, is one of them. A cousin bursts in holding a turnip that may or may not be possessed. You ignore them. The turnip hisses. You still ignore them. They leave. You are proud of your boundaries. The fire pit glows weakly in the center of the room. It offers heat, light, and just enough smoke to guarantee someone will start coughing every 12 minutes like clockwork. Tonight, that someone is your aunt. She blames it on a sensitive constitution, but you suspect it's because she insists on sitting directly in the path of every breeze like a martyr made of soup. The family begins the sacred nightly shuffle. Everyone moves in slow, aching loops, grabbing the last heel of bread, brushing crumbs into corners, elbowing for space near the fire. Your sister tries to pluck something from her teeth with a chicken feather. Your grandmother yells that it's a holy feather. No one is quite sure what that means, but she's holding a ladle like she's willing to duel over it, so the feather is returned reverently to the altar shelf. You sit. Not because you're ready for bed, but because your knees have started issuing warnings. The floor creaks beneath you like it has secrets. The rug, a term used loosely here, smells of old rain and boiled turnip skins. You nestle into it anyway, accepting your fate like a damp potato. From the corner, your brother begins humming. It's a song no one taught him. He claims the birds whispered it into his ear. You assume it's the same bird that dropped something unmentionable into your laundry last week. Still, the tune is oddly soothing, even if every third note sounds like a wounded goat. Your mother stands, brushing off her apron with the kind of sigh that could reshape mountains. She announces it's time to wipe down the children. Everyone under the age of 12 groans. Everyone over the age of 12 pretends not to notice in case they're next. You hold your breath and lean slightly toward the wall like a guilty broom. She starts with the youngest, a feral goblin disguised as a toddler. He's half soot, half jam, and entirely resistant to hygiene. She wipes him with swift, merciless strokes, like polishing a very angry pumpkin. He screams. She hums. The rag changes color twice. Then she moves on. You are next. Of course you are. You always are. She grabs your chin with 2 fingers, tips your head back, and squints at you like a puzzle that doesn't deserve solving. Did you wash behind your ears? She asks. You nod. She lifts your hair. She snorts. You lied. You shrug. I tried, you say, as if that's a defense in court. She smears something across your cheek that smells like vinegar and mushrooms. You choose to die inside quietly. The last of the daylight fades. A rooster calls once, confused. A cow moos from somewhere impossibly close. The family begins to settle, stacking themselves on beds and floor pallets and each other. The dog finds your legs. You try to pretend it's comforting, even though it smells like whatever it ate last, which was definitely not food. You lie back, staring at the beams overhead. One of them has a crack shaped like a duck. You named it Benedict last winter. Benedict keeps you grounded. Your body hums with the faint ache of an unfinished bath, of feet unwashed, of hair combed only by wind and whim. You smell like smoke and stale onions and something you hope was moss. But you're clean enough. Not clean, just slightly less awful. You breathe deep, tasting the night, and close your eyes as the fire sputters, the dog sighs, and someone farts. The day is over. You survived it. Hygiene, medieval style, or at least your version of it. Close enough. The wash basin sits under the bench like it's hiding from something, which is fair because you are about to put it through things no basin deserves. You drag it out with the solemnity of a priest retrieving relics, though this relic smells like someone boiled old socks in onion broth and then gave up halfway. There's a chip on the rim shaped exactly like your Aunt Dorla's left ear, the one she claims she lost part of in the flood of 17, though no one remembers a flood that year, and there's some suspicion the real culprit was an angry goose. Still, the basin bears the mark proudly, a jagged echo of family legend, and you try not to stare at it too long in case it starts whispering. You carry it to the hearth, sloshing the last of yesterday's rinse water in slow, slapping arcs. It's unclear who used it last. It might have been your cousin, who believes washing your hands drives out good luck. It might have been the dog. It might have been a ghost. You wouldn't put it past any of them. The water is already murky before you add more, which is impressive given that the bucket you fill it from is only marginally less grim. The bucket, to its credit, has done its time. It leaks a little, smells like moss and bad choices, and has a handle that squeaks like it's telling secrets in a language no one wants to translate. You splash it into the basin anyway, because tradition doesn't care about quality. The water settles with a sigh, You stare at it. It stares back. You're not sure who looks worse. There's a film on the surface, just enough to catch the firelight and turn it into something vaguely gelatinous. You wonder if that's from the bucket or from your sins. Probably both. You consider blessing it, but remember that the priest once warned you not to use holy water for personal hygiene unless you were actively on fire. This doesn't quite qualify. You dip your rag. The rag is older than your oldest sibling and has, at various points, doubled as a bandage, a flag, a sock, and possibly a tourniquet. It's stiff in the corners and smells like something a cow might mourn. You give it a perfunctory rinse and begin the ceremonial pat-pat slap of nightly not bathing, the sacred art of convincing yourself and anyone watching that this counts. You start with your face, one cheek, then the other, a swipe across the forehead, a quick pass behind the ears that mostly misses. The water leaves streaks, the rag leaves lint. You leave behind your dignity. You wipe your neck, discover a new smudge you don't remember earning, and rub harder. It spreads. You decide it's just part of you now. Someone coughs behind you, and you turn to find your sister waiting with the air of someone who expects to inherit the basin next, but doesn't want to look too eager in case that jinxes it. She gestures at the water, which now resembles stew made entirely of consequences. You tell her to wait. She says, "It's my turn." You say, "It's still hot." It isn't. She knows it isn't, but rules are rules. You move on to your arms. The rag squelches. You pat your elbows, which feel both dry and greasy, and run the cloth down each forearm like you're polishing spoons in a haunted inn. There's something crusty near your wrist. You don't ask questions. You just scrub and pretend not to notice when the rag hisses. It probably didn't. Probably. Your brother stumbles in next, shirtless and shiny, having declared war on his own odor by rolling in mint leaves in panic. He eyes the basin like a rival, then tosses a sock at your feet. It lands with a damp plop. You both pretend it didn't. The dog walks by, sniffs the sock, and whimpers. You work your way to your knees. This is a mistake. The knees have secrets. One of them has a bruise, the color of overripe plums, and the shape of a particularly judgmental saint. The other has what you hope is mud but might be jam. You wipe it off, then check the rag. It is now worse. Everything is worse. You rinse it in the basin and wonder briefly if you're just making soup. Someone has added soap. Not real soap, but the medieval approximation. A lump of grayish substance that smells like lye and sadness. It dissolves slowly, leaving behind a slick that clings to the sides of the basin like regret. You use it anyway. It burns slightly. That feels like progress. You reach for your feet and immediately regret it. They are not feet anymore. They are stories. They are memoirs. They are ecosystems. You dab gently at the tops, then recoil at your own cowardice and dive back in, scrubbing the arches with the desperation of someone trying to erase a bad decision. One toe is bleeding. One toe has a callus that could double as roofing tile. You consider cutting them off entirely, but remember you have to walk tomorrow, and there's no extra shoes, just extra socks, with holes and opinions. The water is now a tragic shade of brown. The rag is a weapon. The air smells faintly of victory and faintly of boiled wool. You wring out the cloth one last time, watching drops fall back into the basin like tiny regrets. Your sister steps forward. You hold up a finger. She groans. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which now carries the scents of all your mistakes, and step aside. She kneels. She stares into the basin. She says, "This is a health risk." You nod. She dips her own rag. The cycle continues. The fire crackles behind you. The shadows flicker against the walls. Somewhere, a cat coughs up something unholy and then sits on it like a throne. You settle back into your corner, clean enough by village standards, which is to say not actively sticky. You smell faintly of smoke and soap that probably shouldn't be legal. Your skin tingles. Your soul feels vaguely scrubbed. The basin sits between you and your sister, sloshing with everyone's collective compromise. You don't feel holy, but you do feel human, and that's enough. The basin is warm, not from heat, but from the sheer emotional weight of what it has endured. It's been passed down the line like a tired pilgrim, and now it rests at your feet, sloshing softly, full of memories you didn't ask to inherit. Your brother was here before you. He used it for his feet. Both of them, fully submerged. He even splashed a little, for flair. He called it soothing the soul. You call it something else, something with fewer syllables and more anger. You stare at the water, which now resembles broth made from forgotten sins and damp socks, and try to find a patch clear enough to pretend it's clean. You dip your rag in, and immediately feel like you've broken a promise. The water clings to the fabric reluctantly, like it knows better. You pat your forearm, then think of your brother's heel, and then regret everything. There's a smell. Faint, familiar, fungal. You say nothing. You try not to imagine the layers. Your mother says it's all the same water anyway, that it builds family bonds. She also says vinegar can cure warts, so her credibility is flexible. Your sister used the basin too, right before your brother. She washed her face, then her hands, then her face again for reasons she declined to explain. She also cried into the water a little, but only because she got soap in her eye, not because of her feelings, which is a distinction she shouted several times. You were there. You nodded. You respected her narrative. The baby was dunked entirely, briefly. Your father held him by the armpits and swirled him around like a holy radish, then pulled him out, dripping and confused, before wrapping him in a piece of curtain. No one questioned it. The curtain had done worse. The baby looked at you with eyes full of ancient wisdom, or possibly indigestion, and then promptly peed on the floor. Your grandmother might have spit in it. You don't know for sure. You only saw her leaning over it, muttering something about demons and gingivitis, then making a sound like a toad clearing its conscience. You could ask her, but she'd just smile and say something cryptic like, "It's part of the ritual," which means yes, but she wants you to feel like it was for your own good. She's done this before. She once blessed a pie by sneezing on it. The water has taken on a thickness, not physical, yet, but emotional. You don't so much wash with it as negotiate. You find a corner where the surface tension seems less judgmental and dip your fingers in, then wipe behind your ears with the sort of conviction you imagine a knight might feel before charging into certain doom. You make a sound. It's somewhere between a sigh and a plea. The basin gurgles in response, as if amused. Your cousin comes over, holding a comb with 2 teeth left and the confidence of someone who's never been betrayed by hygiene. She announces she's ready to do her part, which is cousin code for taking over the basin and pretending none of you have been defiling it. She sniffs it. She recoils. She says, "Did someone put soup in here?" No one answers. She dips her rag in anyway and begins scrubbing her elbows like she's preparing for a duel. You wonder briefly how she always gets to go before you. Then remember she threatens to cry if she doesn't. A powerful tactic, and not without precedent. You watch the water swirl, colors mingling in a slow ballet of shared regret. A fleck of something floats past. Could be dirt, could be food, could be someone's memory. You lean back slightly, just enough to keep your own knees from touching the basin, which has now become sacred in the way a battlefield is sacred, full of ghosts and mistakes. Your father, who once said hygiene was a bourgeois indulgence, now insists on washing his hands nightly with the sort of stern pride usually reserved for tax collectors. He does it with long, deliberate motions, watching the grime leave like he's letting go of a grudge. He never uses soap, says it softens the will. He dries his hands on his trousers and then nods at you like he's passed on something noble. You nod back. You are not sure what you've received. The basin remains. It's never emptied, not truly, not between uses. That would waste water, and water isn't free. It has to be hauled from the well, which is a 5-minute walk if you're lucky, and an 8-minute walk if you're accompanied by your aunt, who insists on stopping to greet every beetle, so the basin stays. It evolves, it matures, it deepens in character and questionable sediment. You remember last winter, when someone dropped a piece of bread in and didn't retrieve it. The water got a crust. Everyone claimed it was spiritual. You tried to believe them. You tried very hard. Now it's summer again, and the basin sweats with you. You wipe your neck, thinking about how the water has touched everyone in the room, how it has traveled across faces, down spines, around toes, and beneath fingernails. It has witnessed things. It is part of you now. You are part of it. This is both poetic and deeply unfortunate. You consider throwing the whole thing out the door, but the last person who did that got a rash and a sermon. The priest said, the rash was God's reminder to be grateful. The rash itself said nothing, but it lingered for weeks. Your grandmother tells you to stop sulking and just wash. We all come from dirt, she says, and we'll go back to it. So what's the fuss about a little now and then? You don't have an answer. You just scrub your wrists and nod, like you're learning something. By the time it's over, the basin is darker, heavier. It smells like it's trying to forget. You place the rag across the rim gently, as if tucking it in. Your cousin takes it next. She hums while she washes. You don't know if it's a hymn or a warning. You lie down on your straw mat, skin still damp, hair still sticky, soul only marginally cleansed. The basin remains by the hearth, steaming faintly like it's plotting its escape. You close your eyes and dream of rivers, clean ones, possibly imaginary, definitely private. You chew the stick slowly, like it owes you money. It splinters at one end and pokes the roof of your mouth, and you wonder briefly if that counts as exfoliating. Your gums ache a little, but that could be the stick, or yesterday's barley stew, or the way your cousin hit you in the jaw with a broom handle during a disagreement about whose turn it was to pet the goat. The pain is part of the process. That's what your mother says anyway. If it doesn't sting, she tells you, you're not doing it right. She says this about most things: cleaning, religion, love. The stick tastes like dirt and misplaced ambition. You try not to think about where it came from. Probably the hedgerow, possibly the floor. There's a slim chance it used to be part of a fence post. You chew harder. A bit of bark flakes off and lodges itself somewhere between your molars and your will to live. You work it out with your tongue. Your breath smells like someone put a pine cone in a soup and forgot to take it out. This, you are told, is progress. Your cousin uses ashes, not metaphorically. She collects them from the hearth and pats them directly onto her teeth like a sinner polishing a tombstone. She says it whitens them. You point out that she looks like she's been gnawing on ghosts. She tells you that beauty has a cost and then spits directly into the fire. It hisses. You feel judged by both of them. Your uncle, who lives in the barn on purpose, swears by moss. He claims it's soft, absorbent, and blessed by druids. You once watched him rub a chunk of it along his teeth like he was seasoning a roast. When you asked him what it tasted like, he said earth and wisdom. When you asked him why he was missing 3 teeth, he said wolves. The two are probably unrelated, but you keep a safe distance anyway. Your neighbor uses beer, not to rinse, not to gargle, just to drink until he forgets he has teeth. He calls it preventive medicine. He smells like fermented decisions and poorly aged apologies. Once, he tried to explain the virtues of barley-based hygiene to a visiting monk, who responded by blessing him and backing slowly away. Now the neighbor says he's immune to curses. You say he's immune to hygiene. He laughs. A tooth falls out. No one is surprised. You continue chewing. The stick bends a little. One end becomes fuzzy, like an insult slowly unraveling. This is good. This is the goal. You swish it along your teeth with the sort of care you usually reserve for funerals and bartering for eggs. Bits of debris fall out. You feel a small sense of victory, then realize some of that debris might have been the stick itself. It's hard to tell anymore. Everything in your mouth tastes like resentment. Your little brother waddles over, clutching a lump of bread and an air of menace. He asks if it's his turn with the stick. You say no. He bites you. You give him the stick. He chews it for 3 seconds, then uses it to dig something out of his nose and throws it in the straw. You both pretend this never happened. You make a note to find a new stick. Tooth care is not so much a routine as it is a series of desperate measures taken in dim lighting with questionable materials. Your grandmother insists you once had a proper tooth comb, made of bone and blessed by a traveling nun, but that it disappeared sometime after Uncle Dern lost a bet with the miller and had to pay him in household objects. Now you have twigs, and sometimes string, if there's extra. You once tried using a chicken feather, but it tickled too much and ended with someone sneezing directly into the basin. You think of the traveling bard who came through last spring. He had gleaming white teeth that sparkled when he smiled. He said it was because he rinsed with mint water every morning. Then he got a stomach worm and lost all his hair, so no one listens to him anymore. Still, his teeth were nice. You remember them fondly, like you would a good pair of shoes or an exceptionally quiet goat. Aunt Frigga tells you that once upon a time, nobles used powdered pearls to clean their teeth. You ask what pearls are. She tells you they're like stones but expensive and smug. You ask why anyone would crush them. She says it was fashionable. You ask what fashionable means. She says it's when rich people do something stupid on purpose and everyone claps. You nod slowly and look at your stick again. It is not pearl. It is not even close, but it has bite marks now, and that makes it yours. You try the ashes once, just once. You dab a little onto your fingertip and rub it along your front teeth. It tastes like charred regret and makes your tongue feel like it's wearing a tiny sweater. Your cousin gives you a thumbs up. Your stomach gives you a warning. You return to the stick with renewed loyalty. Night falls, and the fire crackles as the family gathers for the evening ritual of avoiding each other while pretending to be a cohesive unit. Your father scratches his chin with a spoon. Your sister hums a tune that sounds vaguely like a warning. Your brother is licking a plate, stick long forgotten. You lean against the wall and chew slowly, thoughtfully, like a philosopher who just discovered their teeth are slightly looser than yesterday. You wonder if cleanliness really is next to godliness, or if that's just something someone clean made up to justify their bath schedule. You wonder what your mouth would say if it could talk without your help, probably something rude. You wonder how long your last molar will hang on. You spit into the fire. It hisses. You smile. Something in your gums twitches. The stick, chewed into soft bristles, rests in your hand like a tiny broom. You whisper to it, "You've done enough," and tuck it behind a beam for tomorrow. This is oral care. This is tradition. This is survival, by way of fear. You remove your socks like one might lift the lid off an ancient curse. Slowly, regretfully, with a certain quiet reverence for what's about to be unleashed. They peel away from your skin with a damp reluctance, and you swear you hear a faint suction noise, followed by a whisper that might have been mercy. One sock sticks briefly to your heel before surrendering with a sound that suggests betrayal. The other gives up entirely and slumps to the floor, immediately folding in on itself like it's trying to forget where it's been. The odor is instant and profound. It climbs up your nose and shakes hands with your memories. A bat, mid-flight, mid-squeak, drops out of the rafters and lands near the hearth with a thud, twitching once before retreating into itself like a wounded metaphor. You don't blame it. You almost do the same. There's a moment of silence in the room, as if the very air is reconsidering its contract with your lungs. Your little brother starts to say something, thinks better of it, and instead throws a potato in your general direction. It misses. The intent does not. You glance down at your feet. They look like they've seen things, not great things, things with consequences. The skin is mottled and mysterious. One heel is crusty. The other seems slightly translucent, like it's trying to become something else. Your big toe has its own opinion about the weather and might be developing a second personality. You wiggle them experimentally. A flake detaches and drifts gently to the floor like the saddest snow. Your aunt looks over and makes a warning gesture. You consider apologizing to the floorboards. You reach for the hay. Not the fresh hay, but the night hay. The leftover, slightly resentful pile in the corner that's been stepped on, slept on, sneezed into, and occasionally wept upon. It's not sanitary, but it's traditional. You pull a tuft closer and dab at your foot. The hay resists. It crackles ominously. A splinter jabs your arch, and you hiss, but you press on, because this is the sock ritual, and it must be completed. You wipe again. The hay lets out a soft creak, a warning, perhaps a prayer. You find a spot on your heel that feels like a forgotten bread crust, and scrub it with as much dignity as you can muster, which isn't much. Bits of hay cling to your foot like frightened barnacles. Your grandmother glances over and mutters something about the old ways. You're not sure if she means hygiene or penance. Your cousin sees what you're doing and immediately decides to do it louder. She tosses her socks directly into the fire, which gives a small shriek and then a puff of greenish smoke. The smell is worse. Somehow, she grins at you like she's won. You retaliate by pointing at her left foot, which is visibly growing something. She hurls more hay at you. It sticks to your shin. A chicken walks by, pauses, and backs away. It's that kind of night. You return to your feet. One of them is now mostly clean, in the medieval sense of no longer visibly cursed. The other is still defiant. You grab a new wad of hay, this time with confidence, and start scrubbing in earnest. There's a patch under your pinky toe that feels suspiciously soft. You avoid it. You've learned your lesson. The hay is giving off a smell now too. Part barn, part foot, part ancient wrong. You press harder. Someone passes behind you and coughs pointedly. You do not turn around. You know what shame feels like. It's roughly the same shape as your foot right now. Your sister claims that socks should never be removed at night. She says it invites demons. You tell her the demons are already here and they smell like your brother's arches. He throws a spoon at you. It bounces off the wall and lands in the dog's water bowl, which may or may not double as a washing dish depending on who you ask. The dog drinks anyway. It's a flexible household. Your uncle, who once lived for 6 months without removing his boots, says feet are best left untouched. He says socks form a second skin, and taking them off is like peeling a fruit before it's ripe. You ask if that's why he walks like a haunted wardrobe. He says yes, and also because of the time he fell into a beehive. No one questions him. The beehive story changes every time. You consider putting the socks back on. Briefly. Then you remember the sensation of damp wool hugging your damp skin, and the moment passes. Instead, you turn them inside out and leave them near the fire, where they emit slow, smoldering warnings to the rest of the family. The smell might ward off rats or attract them. It's unclear. Either way, you've contributed. The hay has given up. Your feet are as clean as they're going to get, which is to say they're now just dirty in different places. You flex your toes and feel the cool air hit your skin like a gentle accusation. You sigh and lie back against the wall, feet extended toward the fire, hay scattered like the aftermath of an argument with nature. Tomorrow you'll find another pair of socks, probably from the communal pile, which may contain yours or may contain the ghost of someone else's footwear dreams. Ownership is fluid here, like time, like soap. But for now, your feet are bare. Your dignity is dented. The ritual is complete. You have survived the sock removal. The hay has taken its toll. The fire flickers. Somewhere in the corner, your brother is mumbling about fungus. You close your eyes and pretend you can't hear him. This is your moment. This is your ceremony. This is as clean as it gets. You wedge yourself into the straw bed like a reluctant letter being stuffed into an envelope that already contains tax forms, a piece of cheese, and at least 2 arguments from earlier in the day. Your younger brother is already curled into the middle, having claimed the position of warmth-hoarding tyrant the moment the sun dipped behind the barn. Your older sister flops in beside him with the grace of a sack of mildly aggressive turnips, jostling everyone's limbs until you're unsure whether the knee in your back belongs to you or an outside party. The straw is doing its best to impersonate a real bed, which is admirable, if unconvincing. Most of it is stiff and prickly, the kind of texture that suggests it holds opinions. You swear one stalk just poked you with intent. There's a damp patch near your foot, soft and cold and suspicious in a way that only damp straw can be. Your sister claims it's atmospheric condensation, which is what she says anytime something is wet, but no one wants to admit responsibility. Your brother mutters, "No, it's Jeffrey," and everyone goes quiet. Jeffrey, the dog, lies at the foot of the bed like a shaggy, half-conscious sphinx. He's technically a mutt, but mostly looks like someone started building a wolf and then gave up halfway through to pursue a career in loafing. His eyes are closed, but you know he hears everything. He snores like an old man swallowing bees. Every so often, one paw twitches like he's dreaming of a better family. He releases a scent not unlike boiled cabbage and regret, and somehow you're grateful. It covers the feet. You try to find a position that isn't poking, crowding, or emotionally compromising. There isn't one. Your elbow lands in a warm divot, and your brain refuses to consider it further. You wiggle, trying to create space, but your brother senses the disturbance and flails out an arm, smacking you gently across the face. You retaliate with a strategic knee. He groans and rolls over, taking most of the blanket with him. You have half a corner left, which you curl around your shoulder like it might protect your dignity. Your sister begins to hum. It's a tuneless, wandering sort of hum that suggests she's either calming herself or plotting something. She used to sing lullabies, sweet and soft and vaguely threatening, but after the incident with the goose, she stopped. Now she just hums. Jeffrey huffs, the sound vibrating through the straw, through the floor, through your soul. Outside, the night rustles. The wind slips through the thatch like gossip, bringing with it the scent of manure and moonlight. Someone's goat is bleating in their sleep. You hope it's a dream and not a premonition. The last time a goat made that sound, old Thomas's cart caught fire. He still insists it was prophecy. His wife insists it was jinn. The ceiling above you is just low enough to give you theological doubts. A spider lowers itself slowly from the rafters, surveying your bed like a landlord. You stare at it. It stares back. You come to an agreement. It retracts. Your brother lets out a groan and begins to mumble in his sleep, something about carrots, something about betrayal. You nudge him gently. He rolls toward you and exhales directly into your face. His breath smells like ancient porridge and choices made in haste. You pretend you've lost all sense of smell. You also pretend he isn't drooling. The damp patch has spread. You shift your legs away, trying not to think about what else might be seeping. Your toe brushes against Jeffrey. He growls softly, not in anger, but in that low, existential way that says he understands the futility of it all. Then he farts. You admire his timing, if not the result. Your sister reaches over and yanks the blanket back toward her, murmuring something about fairness and frostbite. You cling to your corner, now a mere suggestion of fabric, and sigh into the straw. A moth flutters overhead. You envy its freedom. Someone sneezes. It echoes through the room like a declaration. Then Silence again. You wonder who sneezed. You wonder if it was human. You hope it was. Your brother starts snoring. Not the gentle rhythmic snore of someone at peace, but the sort of intermittent, gurgling honk that suggests a flute being played underwater by a walrus with sinus problems. You jab him. He stops for 12 seconds, then begins again, louder. Your sister groans and slaps a pillow over her head. The pillow, you realize, is filled with more straw. The cycle is complete. You try to think of warm things, porridge, the hearth, the Sunday, a bath that doesn't involve a communal basin and whispered apologies. You try to count sheep, but one of them bites another, and the rest scatter. You switch to counting regrets. You lose count quickly. The straw shifts under you, settling into your ribs. You itch everywhere. You scratch. Jeffrey watches you with the eyes of a being who has accepted his place in the universe and knows it's beneath yours, but only physically. Someone whispers your name. You freeze. It's your sister. She asks if you farted. You say no. She says, then it was Jeffrey. Jeffrey sighs. He knows his role. Eventually, the night deepens. The fire in the hearth becomes embers. The snoring blends into the wind. The discomfort becomes something close to familiarity. You stop trying to sleep and just sort of rest. With your eyes closed, floating in a liminal space between dreams and straw-induced paralysis. This is what it means to share a bed. This is what it means to be warm. This is what it means to love people and deeply regret doing so at night. This is home. For better, for worse, for damp. Your mother calls you over with the same tone she uses when someone's about to be baptized or buried. You know this voice. It means pain. It means patience. It means the comb is coming. You consider running, but your legs are sore from trying to chase that chicken with the crooked beak all morning, and there's no dignity in limping away from your own mother. So you go, slowly, like a condemned soul accepting fate, and sit on the stool by the hearth, the one with the wobbly leg and the nail that keeps finding knees. She produces the comb with the kind of reverence usually reserved for holy relics or dried herbs you only use when someone's coughing blood. The comb is older than the concept of joy. It has 3 teeth, one of which is bent at an angle that suggests it's been in at least one duel. The wood is smooth with age and secrets. There's a faint smell to it. Smoke, oil, and despair. Your scalp tenses preemptively. Your spirit detaches slightly to hover at a safe distance. She doesn't begin with the comb. That would be too kind. First, she spits into her palm with an accuracy that makes you uncomfortable. It's a generous glob, warm and gleaming, and she rubs it briskly between her hands like she's preparing to summon the dead. Then she presses it into your hair, flattening curls and pride alike. You whimper. She hushes you, tells you it's just a bit of smoothing. You ask if water wouldn't be better. She tells you to stop talking nonsense. You stop talking nonsense. The comb enters your hair with the grace of a rusty plow into dry earth. It tugs. It groans. You feel every knot surrender one by one like prisoners giving false confessions. Your head jerks back involuntarily. She yanks forward. It becomes a game of violent balance. She clicks her tongue in disapproval, not at you, at your hair. She says it's unruly, says it's full of bramble and wickedness, says maybe you've been consorting with hedge spirits again. You try to laugh, but she pulls just then, and it comes out as a strangled squeak. Your sister walks by, sees the combing, and gives you a pitying look. She mouths, "Goodbye," and vanishes. Your brother watches for a moment with the sort of curiosity one reserves for bear traps. He starts to ask a question, and then decides against it. Smart. Your mother hums as she works, a slow, haunting melody that may or may not be a curse. Her hands are firm. Her movements are decisive. You suspect she's enjoying this. She finds a particularly stubborn knot near the nape of your neck and announces its presence with a victorious, aha. You try to shrink. She clamps your shoulder with her free hand like a butcher weighing meat. The comb dives in. You see colors. You see visions. You briefly meet your ancestors. One of them nods at you sympathetically and offers a cup of broth. Then he fades. The comb keeps going. Your mother is a force of nature now. Her brow furrows. Her jaw sets. She is no longer just grooming you. She is fighting entropy. She tells you stories as she combs, because storytelling is tradition, and so is distraction. She talks about how, when she was your age, they didn't even have combs. They used twigs. They used fingers. They used fish bones. She says your generation is soft, too used to comforts like soap and food. You try to remind her that you haven't had soap in 3 weeks. She ignores you and starts on your temples. Your hair crackles. It resists. It twists and recoils like a wild animal. The comb presses on, unrelenting. One of the teeth breaks off and vanishes into the void. She doesn't notice. You do. You feel it enter your hair and become one with the chaos. You'll find it in 3 days, probably while sleeping. At some point, you go numb. It's easier this way. You let your head loll where she pushes it, a rag doll with questionable hygiene and dreams of freedom. The comb continues its pilgrimage. Your ears are tugged. Your scalp is scraped. Your dignity leaves entirely. You are no longer a person. You are a battlefield. She finishes with a triumphant huff and a final punishing pat to your crown. Your hair now lies flat and vaguely shiny, the way damp grass does after a storm. You reach up to touch it, and she slaps your hand away, telling you not to ruin it. You ask if you're allowed to move your neck again. She says not until morning. Jeffrey, the dog, wanders over and sniffs your head, then retreats. Even he respects the process. Your sister reappears, eyes wide, mouth agape. She whispers, "You survived?" You nod slowly, afraid any sudden movement will anger the new hair gods now living on your scalp. You retreat to your corner by the hearth, where your brother offers you a piece of crust as a peace offering. You chew it in silence, aware of every hair follicle now standing in subdued obedience. The comb sits on the table, smug and slightly bloodthirsty. You know it will be back, tomorrow, or the next day, or when your mother gets bored and decides that order must be reasserted. You run a hand through your hair. It doesn't move. It's set now, like ancient clay or bad decisions. Your scalp tingles. You feel oddly aerodynamic. You wonder if this is what nobility feels like. Then you remember they have brushes made of badger hair and lavender oil, and you feel angry on behalf of your entire social class. Still, for now, it's done. You've been detangled. You've been combed into submission. Your curls have been flattened by spit and fate, and you're still breathing. Barely. You select the moss because the rag has seen too much, and your sleeve is already burdened with the sins of soup, sweat, and at least one suspicious goat nibble. The moss, at least, is soft. Sort of. In a moist, clingy, judgmental way. It smells like yesterday's rain and something older, something green and vaguely philosophical. You hold it up to the firelight, just to be sure it isn't hosting anything with eyes. It might be. You proceed anyway. Hygiene waits for no coward. The armpit wipe is a family tradition, though no one admits it out loud. It's passed down in gestures, in grimaces, in the quiet exchanges of damp moss and shared glances of understanding. No one teaches it. You simply know when it's your turn. Tonight, it's yours. You brace yourself. The left armpit comes first, out of habit. You lift your arm and immediately regret every choice that brought you to this moment. The scent that escapes is complex. Notes of hay, regret, and fermented onions with a top layer of stress. The moss twitches slightly. You mutter something that might be a prayer or an apology. possibly a warning. The moss, to its credit, remains still. You begin. The first swipe is always the worst. It's cold, damp, startling, like being hugged by a disappointed forest. You flinch but continue, dragging the moss across skin that hasn't seen proper soap in a fortnight and probably never will again. You scrub, you pat, you smear. The moss works dutifully, absorbing your essence like a humble sponge of shame. Somewhere near your ribs, it catches on a patch of something crusted and ancient. You don't investigate. Your cousin passes by, snorts, and calls you fancy. He uses his sleeve. You remind him that his sleeve also doubles as a handkerchief, and once, during winter, as a mitten. He shrugs. His armpits smell like boiled despair. You continue your wipe with dignity. Your mother sees what you're doing and nods approvingly. She says her mother used to use cold cabbage leaves, says they clung better. You thank her for this information, which you will now carry forever like an unwelcome heirloom. Your sister, meanwhile, claims armpits should be left to the gods. She says scrubbing disrupts your natural aroma, which is how the spirits recognize you. She hasn't washed in 3 moons and has become something of a local myth. The dog growls when she gets too close. She considers it a blessing. You switch to the right armpit, the less cooperative one. You lift, you inhale, you gag slightly. This side has secrets. You dab with the moss gently at first, then more firmly, as if trying to erase a bad memory. The moss surrenders a small puff of earthy odor, a mingling of bog and body. You murmur encouragement. The moss wilts slightly. You persist. A flake of something, skin, maybe, or a crumb of identity, falls to the floor. Your brother points at it and makes a face. You offer to wipe his armpits for him. He flees. Another small victory for cleanliness. The fire crackles, offering moral support. You consider heating the moss, but last time someone tried that, it ended with a shriek, a blister, and a new family rule. So you work with what you have. Cool moss, aching arms, and the faint sense that you're making history. You are. Sort of. Your grandmother used to say the armpits are the gateway to the soul. She also said rats could read thoughts and that potatoes could sense fear, so no one listened much. Still, the words echo now. As you wipe and pat and pray, the moss doesn't start whispering. You pause and hold it up. It seems heavier, wetter, wiser. You nod in respect. The final swipe is ceremonial. You dab once more under each arm, just to say you did. It doesn't feel clean exactly. It feels less offensive. You lower your arms slowly, cautiously, like you're handling sacred relics. The moss drips slightly. You stare at it. It stares back. You set it gently in the moss bowl, where it joins its comrades. Other bits of green, some fresher than others. One possibly just a clump of old lettuce. It is done. You step back, chest out, arms down, and try not to look proud. You are now the cleanest person in the household, if only by default. The dog approaches and sniffs you, then retreats without retching. You consider this a glowing endorsement. Your sister raises an eyebrow, says you smell like guilt and shrubbery. You thank her. Later, as everyone settles into their corners, you feel the faint tingle of air beneath your arms. Cool, free, almost bracing. It's not comfort, not exactly, but it's something. You lie back on the straw, arms slightly akimbo to maintain airflow. Your brother mutters about space. You ignore him. You have earned this. The moss rests in its bowl, weary but honored. It will be reused tomorrow and the day after, until it disintegrates or gains sentience and demands rights. You'll miss it when it's gone. Maybe. For now, you breathe deep. The night is still. Your armpits are less hostile. The moss did its job. You are, by medieval standards, practically radiant. You creep behind the chapel just as the sun gives up for the day, dragging its last golden sigh across the village roofs. The priest is distracted, likely engaged in a theological debate with his goose again. This is your moment. You crouch beside the garden fence, reach through a gap in the splintering wood, and pluck 3 brittle stalks of lavender like you're harvesting forbidden joy. The stalks crumble slightly in your hand. One of them snaps with the audible drama of a twig that has known sin. You wince, mutter a hasty apology to the saint of herbs, and scurry back toward home with your prize clenched in your fist like stolen treasure. Your room, if it can be called that, is a corner of the cottage where the wall leaks and mice hold seasonal meetings. You sit on your straw mat, glance left and right to confirm you're alone, then begin the process. You rub the lavender stalks between your palms, grinding them into a dry, flaky paste that clings to your skin like guilt. It smells faintly floral, mostly dusty, with undertones of earth and ecclesiastical disappointment. Still, it's an improvement. You dab the powder onto your neck, your wrists, under your arms, with what you imagine is the grace of nobility, though in truth you look like someone trying to strangle a ghost. The scent is immediate, sweet, sharp, and absolutely not approved for peasants. You inhale deeply, feeling like you've stepped into the robes of someone who owns 2 pairs of shoes. You've never met such a person, but you imagine they exist. Probably in France. There's a knock at the door. It's less a knock and more a dull thud followed by a grunt, which means it's Daria, the village flirt, the one who smells like cheese and knows it. She bursts in like a question no one asked. Her eyes narrow. She sniffs the air. You smell, she says, pausing just long enough for you to hope the sentence ends there. Nice. You freeze. She takes a step closer. The lavender, traitorous and bold, wafts into the space between you like an invitation written in petals and bad decisions. Daria's eyes gleam. That's not hay, or goat, or turnip sweat, she says, leaning in. What is it? You hesitate. You consider lying. You consider running. Instead, you mumble. Lavender. She gasps. It's theatrical. She clutches her chest like you've confessed to sorcery. From the priest's garden? You nod. You are not proud. She leans in further, sniffing your neck with a seriousness usually reserved for wine tasting or murder investigations. You smell like if romance and mildew had a child, she says. Then she grins. I like it. You do not like that she likes it. She steps back, assessing you with the squint of someone who's just realized the pig they ignored all year might actually win the fair. You feel seen, but not in a way that suggests safety. She reaches out and touches your sleeve, then sniffs her fingers. You're not sure whether to faint or scream. She tells you she's never known anyone brave enough to smell good. She says it like a compliment. It doesn't feel like one. You mumble something about chores and flee into the yard, where the chickens scatter at your approach, sensing your panic. You press yourself against the side of the cottage and breathe shallowly. The lavender is still there, clinging to your skin like a needy poet. You scrub at your neck with the inside of your sleeve. The scent fades a little, but not enough. Later, at supper, your brother wrinkles his nose and accuses you of perfumery. Your father snorts and mutters something about vanity leading to plague. Your mother squints and says, "Didn't the priest say someone was defiling his lavender?" You avoid eye contact and pretend your turnip stew is very interesting. Jeffrey, the dog, sniffs your ankle and whimpers. He sneezes. This feels symbolic. As the evening wears on and the fire settles into a low, judgmental glow, you wonder why you did it in the first place. You tell yourself it was about cleanliness, about self-care, about reclaiming some shred of control in a life that mostly consists of mud, chores, and communal everything. But you know the truth. You wanted to smell like something other than defeat. You lie back on your scratchy straw mat, arms folded under your head, staring up at the thatch. The lavender is still faint in your nostrils. You imagine you're in a distant land, somewhere where people bathe for pleasure and have entire buildings just for sleeping, and no one shares a bed with a cousin and a dog named after a saint. In that land, you are important. You are clean. You are allowed to smell like flowers without it being an act of rebellion. Outside, Daria giggles somewhere near the well. Your name might be part of the sentence. You bury your face in your sleeve and sigh. Tomorrow, you'll go back to moss and spit and pretending not to care. You'll return to the accepted textures of sweat and hay. But tonight, just for a while, you smell like dried romance and divine disapproval. And for reasons you cannot explain, you feel powerful. You hold the chamber pot with both hands, arms slightly extended, like you're presenting a cursed artifact to a very unimpressed god. It sloshes ominously with each step. You know better than to look inside. Looking inside is an invitation to trauma. No one knows exactly what lives in there, only that it's aggressive and possibly planning a coup. The lid is long gone, sacrificed months ago to the fire after Jeffrey mistook it for a chew toy and justice was swift. Now, it's just you and the open air and the unmistakable smell of everything you've ever regretted. The night is colder than sense, the kind of cold that slices through layers like gossip through a small village. You're wearing your thickest tunic, which means it has only 3 holes instead of the usual 5. Your shoes, generous enough to still be called that, have gaps in the soles wide enough to welcome passing insects and philosophical thoughts. With every step, the cold climbs up through your toes and into your spine like a petty ghost seeking warmth. The chamber pot sways. You mutter a warning to it. It doesn't care. Outside, the wind is sharp, judgmental, and entirely unsympathetic to your burden. The path to the dumping spot is uneven, cobbled with rocks, chicken bones, and at least one fossilized turnip. You walk with the careful, halting rhythm of someone carrying both their bodily failures and their dignity in a sloshing bowl of doom. Your sister once tripped on this path and earned herself a new nickname that no one dares repeat in polite company. You will not join her. You walk as though every step is a negotiation with fate. The chickens, silent and wide-eyed in their coop, watch you with the horror of those who know what's coming. You nod grimly at them. They do not nod back. Reaching the edge of the yard feels like winning a battle. The designated dumping pit looms ahead, a shallow trench of shame where chamber pots go to weep. You edge closer, careful not to tilt. The pot growls softly in your grip. Or maybe that's just your stomach reacting to the smell. Either way, you pause to say a few final words. Not a prayer exactly, more of a whispered curse at the entire digestive system and its never-ending betrayals. You tip the pot slowly, with reverence, like an offering, a sacrifice. It pours. It steams in the cold. You feel a moment of peace. Then it happens. Splashback. It's not dramatic. No great geyser of horror. Just a single mocking droplet that arcs through the air and lands with uncanny precision on the side of your foot where your shoe has given up. You freeze. The world stops. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls. The chickens blink. You stare down at your foot, at the spot now marked by fate and physics. You consider screaming, but the silence is louder. You inhale through your teeth, curse softly in 4 languages, and make a mental note to bury these shoes behind the house when no one's looking. You shake your foot like that will change anything. It doesn't. The droplet has claimed you. You are no longer just someone who emptied a chamber pot. You are part of its story now. The walk back is longer, not because of distance, but because of shame. You walk slower, as if the night might forget what it saw. You try not to breathe too deeply, try to focus on anything other than the fact that your toes are now both frozen and haunted. You pass the coop again. One chicken flutters, flaps once, then settles. You take this as an omen, not a good one. Inside, the warmth of the hearth greets you like a passive-aggressive ant. Your brother looks up, sees the pot in your hand, and says, "Did it get you?" You don't answer. He nods solemnly. He knows. Everyone knows. It gets everyone eventually. You place the pot back in its corner, where it will begin the slow process of refilling itself with horror and obligation. You wipe your hands on your tunic and immediately regret it. You sit near the fire, trying to angle your foot just right so the heat can chase away whatever now resides in your shoe. Your sister sniffs the air and makes a face. You pretend you didn't notice. She pretends she doesn't care. The pot sits silently, smug and slightly steaming. You glare at it. It glares back. Tomorrow, it'll be someone else's turn. Maybe your cousin. Maybe your uncle, who claims he has a special technique for avoiding splashback involving a complicated series of tilts and muttered blessings. He also once fell into the pig trough while trying to impress a widow, so no one takes his techniques seriously. You lean back, wrap a scratchy blanket around your shoulders, and stare at the ceiling. You think about soap, about shoes, about a world where people relieve themselves in rooms with doors and flush handles and dignity. You wonder if such a place truly exists, or if it's just something bards sing about to make people cry into their stew. Your foot itches. You try not to think about why. The fire crackles. Jeffrey lets out a soft snore. Somewhere outside, the wind whispers secrets through the thatch, and the chamber pot waits. It always waits. Your grandmother hands you the pot with the solemnity of a monk passing down a sacred relic. It's small, dented, and wrapped in a piece of cloth that might once have been a sock, or a rag, or a particularly distressed squirrel. No one knows. No one asks. She calls it her miracle balm, a phrase that, in your village, usually precedes disappointment, burning, or both. You nod reverently, because that's what you're supposed to do, and because she once chased a tax collector out of town with a ladle, and you fear her deeply. You open the lid and are immediately hit with a scent that can only be described as medicinal betrayal. It's like someone boiled a cabbage in vinegar and sorrow, then left it in the sun for a decade. It's green, but not in a fresh way. It's green the way envy is green, or mold, or curses. The ointment jiggles slightly as you stare into it, as if alive, as if aware, as if waiting for you to flinch. You don't flinch. Not yet. That comes later. She tells you to dab it on your face, cheeks, chin, anywhere. The devil might find tempting. You don't know what that means exactly, but you assume it's code for the T-zone. She says it prevents boils, rashes, wayward thoughts, and one time it even fixed a horse's leg. You don't know if that last part is metaphor or not, and you're afraid to find out. You dip your finger in. It clings like a grudge, thick, tacky, defiantly moist. You apply it to your cheek and immediately feel time slow. It doesn't tingle. It stings, then cools, then stings again, as if it's confused about its mission. You apply more, because you've already committed. Your face begins to smell like a haunted salad. There is something vaguely vinegary, something tangy, and something that might be ancestral disappointment. You feel it sinking in. You feel your pores protesting in tiny, muffled screams. Your little brother walks past, sniffs, and recoils like you've slapped him with a fermented leek. He doesn't say anything. He just makes a sound, a sort of strangled mja, and vanishes out the door. This feels correct. The dog, Jeffrey, sniffs at you from a distance, then decides he no longer respects you and curls up with his back to your shame. You glance into the reflective side of a pewter spoon and see your face glistening with a green sheen that suggests either health or a fungal infestation, possibly both. Your grandmother beams. She says you look protected. You feel like a cursed pair. She tells you that back in her day, they didn't have ointment this fine. They had to mash nettles and pray, sometimes both. She says she got this recipe from an herbalist who lived in the woods and only spoke in riddles and bee noises. You do not question this. You have met that herbalist. She once bit a traveling monk. He apologized to her. You try to focus on the sensation of healing, the soothing, fortifying promise of natural remedies passed down through generations of stubborn, bath-averse survivalists. You try not to focus on the way your skin now feels both clammy and waxed. You shift on your straw mat and catch another whiff. It is deeper now, richer, like pickled hope, like sour destiny, like someone bottled disappointment and called it healing. Your cousin leans into the window and asks if the garden's been cursed. You tell him it's just your face. He blinks twice, mutters something about signs, and runs off to alert the chicken wrangler. This, too, is a normal Tuesday. As the evening drags on and your skin absorbs the potion, or attempts to, you try to think of the boils you don't have, the ones you now feel somehow destined to acquire simply so the ointment can justify its presence. Your grandmother says prevention is everything. She also says goats can smell lies, so you take her words seriously. Later, your mother glances at you and pauses mid-stitch. She doesn't comment, just looks. Then she offers you a piece of stale bread in what you can only interpret as a peace offering. You accept it gratefully. Crumbs stick to the ointment and cling like barnacles to a ship doomed to smell like despair. You scrape them off. Some stay. They are part of you now. You lie down near the hearth, avoiding eye contact with your own reflection in the iron kettle. The ointment has dried slightly, not all the way, just enough to make your face feel like a used pastry. The smell has mellowed into something resembling philosophy. You wonder if monks ever smeared this on themselves and achieved enlightenment via nasal suffering. You wonder if the priest will smell you in the morning and declare you either healed or possessed. The wind slips through the shutters, dragging in the cold, but your cheeks feel immune. You hope this means it's working, or that your nerve endings have given up. Either is fine. You close your eyes. The last thing you hear before sleep claims you is your sister whispering to herself, "It's moving." You do not ask what. You do not want to know. You focus on your breathing, which is difficult when your nose smells like sanctified compost and your upper lip feels like it's hosting a minor ritual. Tomorrow, perhaps you will be boil-free. Perhaps your skin will glow. Perhaps the chickens will respect you again. But for now, you are sticky, pungent, and ancient in ways that defy language. You are one with the ointment, and it is one with you. You examine your feet with the caution usually reserved for prophecy or rotting fruit. They're not feet, really. They're maps of every poor decision you've made since learning to walk. You've seen boots with more integrity than your soles. The left foot is mostly intact, just a bit swollen in places where bone used to be. The right foot, however, is issuing threats. It pulses with a quiet defiance, as though daring you to touch it. You do not touch it. There's a spot, roundish, pinkish, with a personality. It wasn't there yesterday. You're not sure if it's growing or if your fear is just magnifying it. It itches with the subtlety of betrayal. You poke at it. It wiggles. You stop. Your stomach drops in a way that suggests divine punishment or possibly dinner gone wrong. You call for your grandfather because he's survived at least 4 plagues and 1 goat rebellion and is therefore the closest thing your family has to medical wisdom. He limps over, leans in, and squints like the foot owes him money. After a long silence, he announces, "It's either a blister or a prophecy." You blink. He nods solemnly. "Might be the mark of St. Hubert, or a bean boil." He sniffs your foot. You recoil. He nods again, as if the scent confirms something cosmic. Your aunt arrives, drawn by the smell of confusion and garlic. She's carrying her usual solution to everything, butter. She says butter will calm the swelling, ease the spirit, and also make your foot more appealing to fairies. You ask if that's a good thing. She says nothing and begins unwrapping a suspiciously sweaty cloth. You do not ask where the butter came from. Meanwhile, your cousin begins drawing circles in the dirt around your foot. He says you need protection. You ask from what? He says, from what comes next, and refuses to elaborate. He sprinkles ash and mutters something in a language that might be Latin or might be the lyrics to a tavern song. You feel mildly safer, but also slightly annoyed. Your grandmother peeks in, sees the commotion, and whispers, "It's the foot curse, isn't it?" You say no. She says, "They always say no." She disappears, probably to fetch a talisman or a turnip, or both. You begin to wonder if you should have just pretended not to notice the spot and let fate do its work. The dog licks the foot. You yell. Everyone yells. The dog looks proud. Your grandfather takes this as confirmation that you are, in fact, mildly possessed. He begins humming a melody known only to those who've survived fevers and marriage. Your aunt tries to butter your foot mid-humming, but your cousin waves her off, saying it will interfere with the ritual energy. They bicker. You sit perfectly still, because moving might anger someone's interpretation of fate. Your brother shows up late, sees your foot, and says, "That's definitely a worm." He says it like he's seen many worms. He hasn't. He just enjoys causing alarm. He leans in close and squints like he's evaluating produce. "Could be a twin you absorbed," he adds thoughtfully. You tell him to go away. He lingers, because he's family, and that's what family does. Eventually, your grandfather declares that garlic is the only path to salvation. Your aunt disagrees and waves her butter like a weapon. They compromise by rubbing both on your foot simultaneously, which results in a scent that could drive away demons, small rodents, and perhaps love itself. Your cousin continues chanting. Your sister starts crying, but she's always been sensitive to dairy-related chaos. You start to feel something. Not healing, exactly. More like resignation. The butter and garlic form a glaze that glistens in the firelight, making your foot look like a cursed roast. You feel marinated in your own confusion. The spot does not fade. It does not grow. It simply exists, smugly, like a guest who won't leave. As the evening drags on and your foot begins to feel both holy and edible, you decide that perhaps sleep is the better healer. Your family seems content that they've done all they can. Your grandfather places a garlic clove under your pillow, just in case, and your cousin redraws the ash circle around your bedding. You thank them all with the hollow tone of someone who no longer fears the unknown, only the repetition of it. You crawl onto the straw mat, foot sticking slightly with each movement. Jeffrey the dog curls up nearby, his nose crinkling at the smell but his loyalty outweighing his instincts. You wonder if the spot will still be there in the morning, or if it will have migrated or grown a name. Your mother pokes her head in and says you should have used nettle instead. You nod. Everyone always has an opinion, especially after the ointment's already on. The fire crackles low. Outside, a breeze slips through the shutters like a whispered warning. Inside, your foot throbs once, not in pain, but in presence, as if reminding you that it's still the main character of your evening. You close your eyes and focus on sleep. Not healing, not divinity, just the kind of sleep that comes after garlic, butter, ash, and fear. The kind of sleep that welcomes confusion like an old friend and hopes tomorrow will be slightly less interpretive. You dream of feet, not yours, just feet, marching, laughing, some of them glowing. You wake up once to adjust your blanket and feel a gentle squelch. You sigh. Of course, morning will come. The spot may be gone, or it may demand a name and voting rights. But tonight, you sleep. You do not think. You do not ask. You let the foot do what it must, and whatever it becomes, you'll deal with it after breakfast. You begin the nightly flea check with all the ceremony of a knight preparing for battle. If knights were barefoot, half asleep, and covered in someone else's hay crumbs. The blanket lies before you, a lumpy battlefield of straw, wool, and broken promises. You've known this blanket your whole life. You've wept under it, eaten on it, sneezed into it during the winter of the great pollen tragedy. And yet, despite your years of loyalty, it has betrayed you. Repeatedly, violently, with legs, you scratch at your shin and count the bites. 1, 2, 3, possibly 4. If you include the suspicious welt near your ankle that's beginning to look like a topographical map of disappointment. You whisper a soft curse and begin your ritual inspection, patting down the layers with the precision of a monk searching for sin. Your fingers twitch every time the fabric shifts beneath you. It always shifts. It wants you afraid. Your brother is already snoring beside you, mouth open, dreams, probably full of meat and power. He's bitten too, but he doesn't care. He says fleas only suck blood from the weak, which makes you want to throw a sock at him. You don't, mostly because the sock might retaliate. You lift the corner of the blanket and immediately spot movement. It's fast, clever, and full of secrets. You reach for it with a fury reserved for debt collectors and cousins who steal your turnips. You miss. It vanishes into the folds. The blanket eats the evidence, like it's complicit. You return to scanning, your fingers twitching like divining rods over patches of wool. A flea leaps near your thumb, and you swat. You miss again, but this time you disturb something else. A beetle, round and glossy, blinking at you with the judgment of a disappointed librarian. You stare at each other. A beat passes, then another. You name her Mildred, because she looks like she's had a long, unforgiving life, and at some point was probably in charge of something. Mildred doesn't move. She simply waits, radiating calm in a way that makes you feel like you're the unreasonable one. You ask her if she's responsible for the bites. She offers no answer. Beetles are famously tight-lipped. You attempt to shoo her toward the window crack, but she scuttles deeper into the bedding like someone dodging taxes. You sigh and allow her temporary residence. You figure if she can keep the fleas in line, it's worth the rent. You find another bite on your arm, fresh, still tender. You snarl, feral now, the spirit of 1,000 itchy peasants whispering vengeance through your blood. You slap the blanket. It thumps. Your brother stirs, mutters something about soup, and rolls over. You freeze, caught in the moment between wrath and sleep, your hand still pressed against the straw like a judge deciding fate. Then you see it. The flea, bold, daring, sitting atop the mound of blanket like it owns the place. You prepare for the final strike. Your hand rises, trembling with purpose, and then it jumps into your hair. Your composure leaves you. You leap to your feet, nearly knocking over Jeffrey the dog, who grunts in annoyance and resumes snoring. You slap at your scalp like it owes you money, like it called your mother a goat. Your sister groans from the corner. She tells you to sit down before you summon more things. You do not listen. You are in a duel now. One soul must fall. Eventually, the itching subsides. Not because you've won, but because the flea is clever and has gone somewhere you cannot reach without ceremony and possibly fire. You sit down, defeated. Jeffrey offers a half-hearted tail thump in solidarity, then scratches his own ear with great drama. You start the second sweep of the blanket. This time you go slower, more cautious, fingers dragging across each seam like you're reading the gossip etched into its fibers. You find crumbs. You find hay. You find the corner of a page someone ripped from the church hymnal and used to wipe something unspeakable. You find a dried berry, possibly from last summer. You do not find another flea. You begin to feel foolish. Maybe it was just one. Maybe it was a rogue. Maybe it's still laughing at you from inside your left sock. You take off the sock. You shake it. Nothing emerges. Just the faint scent of sadness and onions. You lie back down, exhausted, your dignity crumpled like a cabbage leaf. Mildred remains at the edge of the blanket, unmoved by your plight. You think about asking her for advice, but you know she'll just stare silently, the way elders do when you confess that you tried to clean something with soap. Your mother's voice drifts in from the next room. She warns that if you're still awake, the night spirits will steal your dreams and replace them with tax worries. You mumble a reply and pull the blanket up to your neck, ignoring the feeling that something small and jumpy is already nesting near your ribs. Sleep comes eventually, not like a warm embrace, but like a resignation, like a bureaucrat stamping your forehead with denied and walking off into the mist. You scratch once more for good measure and sigh. Tomorrow, you'll boil the blanket again, even though last time it only made the fleas stronger. They seem to like heat and drama, but for now, you close your eyes and accept your fate. You are not a warrior. You are not a healer. You are a host, and somewhere beneath the folds, Mildred watches. You sit on the edge of your straw bed, holding one sock in your hand like it's a question no philosopher has dared ask. The other sock is already on your foot, sagging at the ankle with the weary resignation of something that has seen too much and smelled even more. The debate begins again. You have it every night, and every night it wins. To sock or not to sock? That is the question, and the answer changes with the wind. Last week, you slept barefoot and woke up with frost-nipped toes and what might have been a squirrel whispering threats from beneath the bedding. The week before that, you wore both socks and awoke to find them glued to your feet with an adhesive blend of sweat, hay, and betrayal. Tonight, you consider the bold, risky middle ground. One sock, a foot, hedging its bets. You ease the lone sock over your foot. It's the sock with the hole in the heel and a smell that suggests fermented turnips. It grips your foot like a desperate relative, clinging for purpose. You feel almost noble, balanced, a philosopher of warmth, one foot shielded from the creeping chill of night, the other braving fungal exposure like a martyr. This, you think, is moderation. The sock disagrees. Almost immediately, it begins its slow descent into oblivion. You don't notice at first. You're too focused on arranging your limbs into the least uncomfortable geometry allowed by straw bedding and shared space. Your brother mumbles in his sleep and kicks out a leg like a dreaming donkey. You scoot away, tucking your blanket under your chin and praying the fleas are too full from last night to bother again. Then you feel it, the bare skin of your foot, exposed, vulnerable, cold. You reach down. Your hand touches straw, some unidentifiable crumb, and then nothing. The sock is gone, vanished, not crumpled at the end of the bed, not twisted near your ankle. Gone, absorbed. You shuffle around, kicking through the straw like a confused rooster. Your brother grunts. Jeffrey the dog lets out a sound of warning or indigestion. Still, no sock. You lift the blanket, peek underneath. Nothing but a few beetles, and what might be the edge of someone's dinner roll from 3 nights ago. You lie back in defeat, accepting the law of the land. The sock has returned to the earth, as all things eventually must. You close your eyes and begin to shiver, internally debating whether to remove the other sock to match, or let one foot enjoy luxury, while the other suffers like an exiled prince. The thing is, one socked sleeping comes with responsibilities. You are now a bridge between worlds, the warm and the clammy. If you favor the socked foot too much, it gets cocky and starts itching. If you show pity to the cold one, it reminds you it's the one most likely to lose a toe. There is no winning. There is only mild temperature inequality and slow descent into madness. You try to focus on sleep. You picture sheep. They all have socks. They mock you silently as they leap over a fence made of splinters and regret. You adjust your blanket. Your sister mumbles something about witches. The straw crackles beneath you like it knows the joke and wants in. Eventually, the sock reappears, not through effort, through fate. It brushes against your calf like a ghost with unfinished business. You grab it quickly, triumph blooming in your chest. You nearly cry. Then you smell it. The sock has journeyed Through what? You'll never know. But it's wet, slightly sticky. You stare at it, now in your hand, and consider whether victory is worth this price. You slip it back on anyway, because that's what people do in this house. They forgive, they endure, they wear the wet sock, whisper a prayer, and hope tomorrow offers something better, like a second-hand foot wrap or a less judgmental beetle. You curl back into your spot, now fully socked but existentially shaken. Your feet warm slowly. You feel a bit safer, less likely to die in the night of foot exposure or unbalanced dreams. Your brother rolls toward you and exhales directly into your face. It smells like onions, an apology. You choose to interpret it as a blessing. Jeffrey the dog repositions, pressing his cold nose against your ankle with the kind of intimacy that borders on spiritual. You let him. He's warm, and you're tired. Outside, a breeze whistles through the cracks in the wall like it's looking for someone to scold. Your feet tingle. You wonder briefly if that's circulation or revenge. Sleep pulls at your eyes, but your mind lingers on the sock. Not just tonight's sock, but socks in general. What even are they? Protection? Fashion? Tiny cloth prisons for hope? You remember when you had a matching pair. It was spring, and your aunt hadn't yet used one as a potholder. Simpler times. The thought fades as you drift. Your dreams tonight will feature socks, some wet, some lost. One might try to speak to you, warning you about something urgent, but you'll forget it by morning. That's how socks are. They come, they go, they vanish into straw, and sometimes they come back a little stranger than before. Your sister calls you over with the grim tone of someone announcing a public execution. You already know what this is about. She's sitting on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, holding a comb that looks like it was forged in the fires of mild disappointment. It has precisely 7 working teeth and the kind of jagged optimism that says, "I've been through worse." You sigh, shuffle over, and plop down in front of her like a prisoner awaiting judgment. The lice inspection is a nightly tradition, not because it works, but because it gives the illusion of control, like putting a tiny fence around a wild boar and calling it a pen. The truth is, everyone has lice. You, your siblings, probably Jeffrey the dog, the priest, the priest's beard. The entire village is a crawling waltz of parasitic passengers with names like Nibbles and Not Again. She parts your hair with the comb and immediately clicks her tongue. It's the sound of bad news. She says it with a kind of relish, like she enjoys finding things to be concerned about. You try to breathe normally. You attempt not to flinch. You fail at both. "There he is," she says, with the reverence of someone spotting a comet. "Roger." You groan. Loudly. She ignores it. "He's big," she continues, poking the alleged insect with the tip of the comb. "Stubborn, too. Look at how he's clinging. Proud little guy." You insist it's a scab. Just a simple, honest, probably heroic scab doing its best to heal in peace. She tells you to stop defending lice. You tell her she's giving him too much credit. She says you're in denial. You say denial is a river. She doesn't get it. Roger remains. She doesn't remove him. Not yet. She says it's important to study him, to understand the enemy. You wonder if she's starting a collection. She hums as she combs further, probably imagining a terrarium of scalp dwellers with tiny name tags and a tour schedule. She says there are no others, just Roger. Somehow, that feels worse. One lone survivor of what should have been an eradicated species, a pioneer, an icon, a menace. You feel the itch begin. It starts at the back of your neck and crawls up like guilt. You try to scratch subtly. She slaps your hand away. "Don't disturb the treaty," she says. You ask what treaty. She says Roger has rights now. You say lice don't get rights. She says that's exactly the kind of thinking that leads to uprisings. You consider headbutting her. She calls that an act of war. The inspection continues with the intensity of a mid-level inquisition. She finds 3 more suspects. 2 she dismisses as dandruff. 1 she names Mildred, then changes her mind, says it's a seed, possibly from the turnip stew. You don't ask how that got in your hair. You already know. Life is a vortex, and your head is the welcome mat. Eventually she stops, declares the scalp mostly clear. You ask about Roger. She shrugs, says he's made himself at home, offers to knit him a tiny scarf. You make a noise that's part despair, part chronic resignation. She pats your shoulder like you've just suffered a noble defeat. You tell her it wasn't a battle. She says it was, and you lost. You go sit in the corner of the room, rubbing your head against the wall like a sheep with unresolved issues. The wall doesn't help. It just sheds a bit of old mud and a beetle. The beetle gives you a look and crawls away, unimpressed. You think about Roger, about how he's probably having a feast right now, dancing between follicles, writing sonnets about conquest. You think about setting fire to your hair. Then you remember the last time someone tried that and lost their eyebrows until Easter. You decide against it. Your brother suggests vinegar. Your aunt suggests garlic. Your grandfather suggests exile. None of these feel like solutions. They feel like vengeance with extra steps. You try to sleep. You really do. But the awareness of Roger's presence is loud, not literally, but spiritually. It's like knowing someone's reading over your shoulder, only that someone is chewing on your scalp and possibly organizing a neighborhood. You toss. You turn. The pillow smells like old straw and regret. Jeffrey snores against your knee. You hear your sister mutter, "Long live Roger," in her sleep. You punch your pillow and whisper, "I hope he chokes." Somewhere near your left temple, there is movement. You pretend you don't notice. You tell yourself it's nothing. You lie to yourself like you always do when hope seems easier than action. Tomorrow, maybe you'll boil the comb, or shave your head, or become a monk. But tonight, you lie there in silence, knowing you are not alone. You are never alone. Not while Roger lives. You lie in bed, cocooned in scratchy wool and old straw, wondering if your left knee is currently resting on a beetle or if the beetle is merely using you for warmth. The room is still, too still, which in a medieval peasant household means something is either broken or breeding. Jeffrey, the possibly sentient dog, twitches in his sleep and lets out a low growl at nothing in particular. Your sister mumbles something about potatoes and treason, but beyond the immediate chaos of your shared bed, the world goes quiet. Then it happens. A sneeze. Loud, abrupt. The kind of sneeze that could qualify as a heraldic announcement in certain regions of the countryside. It echoes through the thin wall like a divine command. Your neighbor, old Elric, has done it again. You recognize the signature at once. Forceful, wet, and accompanied by a brief gasp that sounds like he either saw the face of God or accidentally swallowed part of his curtain. And then, nothing. Just an eerie, all-consuming silence, like the earth itself held its breath in solidarity. You wait. 5 seconds. 10. A full minute. No cough. No sniffle. No follow-up muttered curse or clatter of a wooden spoon hitting the floor. Just you, your uncertain beetle companion, and the weight of an unanswered bodily explosion echoing into the night. You consider the worst. Has he perished mid-sneeze? Is that possible? Could someone, in the middle of expelling mucus and unresolved trauma, simply stop? You remember your cousin Lyle once fainted after sneezing too hard near the pig pen, but that had more to do with the pigs than the sneeze. You weigh your options. You could knock on the wall, ask if he's all right. But if he is fine, that'll just be awkward. If he's not fine, you'll be the one who has to explain to his daughter why he died without pants on. Again. Also, you're borrowing his goat tomorrow. You really don't want to deal with widow paperwork when all you need is a goat to carry turnips to the market. It's a good goat. Punctual. respects personal space, doesn't eat shoes. If Elric dies, there's no telling what his children will do with the animal. Last time, they sold his geese to a man who only used them for decoration. You're still not over it. The wall creaks. Not helpfully, just enough to imply menace. You glance toward the direction of Elric's hovel, hoping for a sign. Footsteps, coughing. Possibly the sound of someone smacking a wooden spoon against something ceramic. Instead, a cat screeches 2 houses down, followed by a thud and someone yelling, "I said that's my fish, Harold." You sigh. Night sounds in the village are always something between a lullaby and a mild psychological thriller. Somewhere, a baby cries like it's seen the end of days, probably your cousin's newest one. That child has lungs that could summon thunder if properly harnessed. You pull the blanket tighter around yourself and stare up at the ceiling, which is just the underside of the roof but feels metaphysical in moments like this. You try not to think about the sneeze, or the silence that followed, or the goat, but your brain is uncooperative. It wants to know if Elric is okay. It wants to know why he always sneezes just once, never twice. It wants to know if it's weird that you feel emotionally invested in someone else's goat more than most of your own family. What if Elric is dead? You start picturing the funeral, the priest mumbling half-remembered Latin, the widow, Marla, asking if she can pawn the ladle you borrowed 6 months ago. You never gave it back. You still use it to stir your hair-cleaning vinegar. You shift on the mattress. Your foot finds a cold spot. You decide that's good luck, or bad luck, or just an omen with ambiguous marketing. Either way, it distracts you long enough for the silence to grow louder again. Now you're fully convinced that you'll wake up tomorrow to a dead man and a goat in mourning. You wonder how goats mourn, quietly, loudly, musically. Then, just as you're beginning to consider making peace with the idea of goat inheritance law, there's a snort, muffled, unmistakable, followed by a cough, then a muttered curse word involving a fishmonger, a priest, and a very specific fungal rash. Relief washes over you like someone dumping lukewarm stew down your back. Elric lives. The goat is safe. The turnips will travel. You feel absurdly grateful for the mundane continuation of someone else's respiratory function. You think about how strange Life Island, that the sound of phlegm in the night can provide such comfort. You make a note to tell Elric tomorrow that his sneeze was alarming but ultimately appreciated. You probably won't tell him, but you think about it. Your eyes start to close. Jeffrey snorts beside you and licks your knee. It's unclear if this is affection or if he thinks you're edible. Your sister shifts and mutters something about Roger again. You really hope the lice haven't unionized. As the darkness wraps around you, softer now, you hear Elric blow his nose with the vigor of a man declaring vengeance on dust. It's messy. It's loud. It's perfect. You smile. Everything, for now, is exactly how it should be. The soap is beige. Or perhaps it was beige once, before life and sin transformed it into something between bone and betrayal. You hold it in your palm like it might confess something if you stare long enough. It does not. It merely crumbles slightly at the edges, as though exhausted by its own existence. You nod in mutual understanding. You, too, are exhausted by your own existence. The lye in the soap is supposed to cleanse. That's what your aunt said before she gave it to you wrapped in an old sock and a warning. Use sparingly, she muttered, or the skin might think it's being punished. She said it with the calm gravity of a woman who once scrubbed her arms raw and saw angels. You were 8. You've never quite recovered from either the image or the scent. You dip your fingers into the basin, the same one used for face dabbing, armpit rituals, and, earlier, a brief argument involving carrot storage. The water is now a suspicious hue, somewhere between mushroom grief and emotional algae. It sloshes like it holds opinions. You do not ask what they are. The soap meets the water with a hiss, not audible, but emotional. You know it's displeased. So is your skin. The moment it touches your knuckles, there's a faint tingling, the kind that whispers, "You've made a mistake." In 14 medieval dialects, you lather, which is generous. It does not lather. It suggests the idea of lathering, then reconsiders and clings to your palm like despair. You rub anyway. You are committed to the illusion. Your hands are covered in a thin film of something that might be cleanliness if you squint at it morally. The grime shifts, some of it coming loose like regret during a confession. Most of it stays. It knows your secrets. It has tenure. You scrub under your fingernails, remembering vaguely that you use those same fingers to pick turnips, pet a sheep, and possibly investigate a questionable bump on Jeffrey the dog's backside. You do not dwell on this. You hum a tuneless song instead. It's what your mother does when she cleans, though hers is usually accompanied by muttering about plague and men. The soap smells faintly of despair, or maybe rosemary. It's hard to tell. Scents in the peasant world are often aspirational. You sniff your fingers after rinsing. The result is ambiguous. You wince. Then, inexplicably, sniff again. It's worse the second time. It smells like scorched herbs and generational trauma. You nod slowly, accepting the outcome. Your cousin emerges from the shadows, holding a different bar of soap, this one allegedly made from pig fat and mint leaves. It looks friendlier but somehow greasier. She offers it without speaking, as though she has witnessed your suffering and decided to escalate the situation. You decline with a polite hand wave and a martyred expression. She shrugs and uses it to clean a spoon that's mostly rust. You dry your hands on a cloth that once might have been a tunic. It's coarse and damp, the way all cloths are in this season. It does not dry your hands so much as remind them of the concept of dryness. Still, you pretend. That's all this is, really. Pretend cleanliness, symbolic soap. A pantomime of hygiene performed nightly so the fleas think you've tried. The wind whistles through a crack in the wall. It carries with it the scent of manure, wood smoke, and someone's attempt at garlic stew. You inhale deeply, then regret it. Your nose now smells worse than your hands. You consider, briefly, the possibility of bathing. An actual bath, full immersion, the kind they write songs about. Then you remember the last time you bathed, the way the water turned opaque after 3 seconds, and the frog that wouldn't leave. You shudder. No, this is better. This is safer. Controlled suffering. Your younger brother walks in and dips his whole hand into the basin, then wipes it on his tunic. You stare. He grins. His hand is now filthier than before. You nod approvingly. He is learning the way. You look down at the soap again. It has degraded further, now smaller, and somehow angrier. You whisper, "Good enough," with the reverence of someone closing a casket. You place it on a cracked dish next to a single feather and a rock someone once declared holy. It slides slightly, leaving a trail of uncertain purpose. You flex your fingers. They tingle faintly, not in a clean way, more like the aftershock of an emotional decision. But they're not worse. That counts. You did the ritual. You showed up. That's what matters. In the Dark Ages, survival is 90% performance. You turn away from the basin, from the soap, from the slow dissolution of your epidermis. Behind you, the room shifts back into its nightly dance. Flickering fire, creaking beams, the gentle slap of straw against skin. You hear someone outside drop a bucket and swear with creativity. The world continues. You smell a little less like raw turnip. Victory, by medieval standards. The sun is gone, tucked behind the trees like it's ashamed of what it's left behind. The chill seeps in slowly, the kind of creeping cold that doesn't announce itself so much as slide under your tunic and whisper disappointing truths about your circulatory system. You regard the pile of blankets at the foot of the bed with the seriousness of a knight preparing for siege. There are 3 of them, each with a story, none of them pleasant. The top blanket is wool, probably, possibly moss. It itches like betrayal and smells faintly of onion, sweat, and curses. It's the thickest one, and therefore the most threatening. The second blanket is more holes than fabric, a sort of loose netting that might once have been luxurious if luxury was defined by drafts and disappointment. It serves no thermal purpose but is considered traditional, which means removing it would cause familial unrest and possibly hauntings. The third and final layer is thin, suspiciously soft, and emits a cheese-like aroma that suggests intimacy with livestock. No one remembers where it came from. It simply arrived one winter and never left. Like sorrow, you begin layering. First, the holy blanket. You lay it across the straw like a lace of historical suffering, trying to align the remaining threads in a way that at least gives the impression of purpose. It flutters slightly as you work, more suggestion than textile. Then comes the cheese blanket. You try to fold it neatly, but it resists, sliding like it has goals. Eventually, you give up and drape it over the first layer, nose wrinkling. The smell is not strong, but it is persistent, like guilt. The itchy blanket waits. You hesitate. You know what it does. You've worn it before. You've emerged from under it at dawn, looking like a peasant-shaped rash. But the cold is rising now, climbing your legs like a judgment. You pull it on with the urgency of someone fleeing consequence. The moment it touches your skin, your nerves protest. They write angry letters to your brain, which responds by telling your arms to pull the blanket higher. Survival outweighs comfort. Barely. Within minutes, your body begins the inevitable betrayal. It sweats, not from exertion, but out of confusion. The mix of suffocating heat and exposure makes it panic. Your knees are too warm. Your elbows are freezing. Your ears exist in a liminal temperature state that can only be described as emotional. You kick one leg out. This does nothing. You toss back the itchy blanket. The room inhales. Cold air rushes in like a scandal, brushing your skin with the enthusiasm of a jilted lover. You gasp and immediately throw the blanket back on. The sweat has cooled into a fine glaze of peasant frosting. You shiver with conviction. Your sister stirs beside you, mumbling something about goats and sins. She is wrapped in what might be a curtain, layered with hay, and appears perfectly comfortable. This enrages you. You adjust your cheese blanket higher out of spite. It releases a new pocket of scent, one that smells like aged despair and mild dairy. You cough delicately. The holy blanket has slipped during all this, pooling around your waist like a judgmental scarf. You try to straighten it, but it resists organization, flopping sideways like a tired flag. It may, in fact, be sentient. You apologize to it. You're not sure why. The fire in the hearth has died. Of course it has. It sputtered earlier, coughed once, then gave up like most things in this house. You hear a faint crackle from the coals. More memory than heat. The room leans into its chill. You consider lighting it again, but that would require moving, and your legs have just begun to consider the possibility of warmth. It's a dangerous game. Leave the bed and face frost. Or remain and slowly pickle in your own anxiety sweat. You sigh and settle deeper into the blanket puzzle. Maybe if you just stay still, your body will adjust. That's what the old man in the village says. Let the body teach the blanket, he mumbles. No one knows what it means. He's mostly moss now. Your toes press against the bottom of the bed. They meet something hard, possibly the dog, possibly a very old potato. You do not investigate. Instead, you curl your feet back in and tuck the itchy blanket around them, whispering a prayer to the saints of warmth and scratchiness. You try to sleep, but the layers are restless. The cheese blanket slides up your side. The Holy One bunches near your chest. The itchy blanket continues to assault you with its abrasive affection. You shift. The blankets shift back. It becomes a war of subtle movements. You reach a truce by sheer exhaustion, and just as your eyes begin to close, the sweat returns. The heat builds again, a wave of unwanted intimacy. You fling one arm out, hoping to cool. It brushes the wall. The wall is cold and slightly damp. You retreat instantly. Your skin has questions. You offer it no answers. Eventually, you find a position that is not comfortable, but tolerable. Your head is half on the cheese blanket, half on a straw bundle. Your arm is under your sister's foot, and your back itches from the wool. But you are still, and that counts. The wind howls outside, and something thuds softly against the door. Possibly a chicken, possibly a demon. You no longer care. Under your absurd collection of historical fabrics, you sweat, shiver, itch, and question the choices of every ancestor who ever looked at a sheep and thought, yes, that will be my climate strategy. You fall asleep anyway, blanketed in discomfort, warmed by frustration. You drift into dreams of slightly better hay. The air is quiet, thick with the kind of silence that feels preloaded with betrayal. The fire has reduced itself to a sulking glow, and your siblings have arranged themselves into their nightly puzzle of limbs and blanket demands. You've barely carved out your narrow strip of straw and wool, careful not to cross into Jeffrey's foot zone or Agnes's rolling radius. You lay back, exhale, and for a fleeting moment, you think, maybe, just maybe, tonight you will drift off gently, without any unusual interruptions from rodents, dreams, or digestion. Then it happens. A sound, not loud, not boastful, just decisive. A puff, a release. Like a musical sigh from someone who has been holding in disappointment since Michaelmas. You freeze. Not out of fear, but reverence. This is the beginning. No one says a word. No one even breathes deeply. You all know the rule. It's older than your parents' marriage, and slightly more sacred than church. You don't speak of it. You don't giggle. You don't blame. The first fart of the night is a private event witnessed publicly. It belongs to no one, and everyone. To acknowledge it is to break the truce. You turn your face toward the wall, feigning deep sleep. Someone adjusts the blanket. A toe brushes your ankle and is swiftly retracted. Silence resumes, thickened now, like stew left out overnight. You begin to relax again, body loosening from its fart anticipation posture. The worst is over. The first volley has been launched. Peace resumes. Then the second one hits. This one is louder, bolder, possibly strategic. It doesn't just happen. It announces itself. It is accompanied by a shift in bedding and what might be a small, satisfied exhale. You resist the urge to clutch your nose. The smell arrives slowly, with the stealth of a creeping fog and the authority of something that ate turnips too quickly. Still, the pact holds. No one moves. No one breathes through their nose. You hear a single wheeze from the dog. Jeffrey mutters something that sounds like, "Saints preserve us," but he says it into his pillow, so technically it doesn't count as breaking the silence. The room settles again. Straw rustles. A sibling sighs. You tuck the holy blanket tighter under your chin, hoping to filter the air, forgetting briefly that it is mostly holes and the remnants of childhood diseases. You survive. Barely. Then the dog farts. You know it's the dog because it doesn't sound human. It's longer, flappier. It rises in pitch like a question and ends in something wet. The effect is immediate. A moan from your sister. A disgusted grunt from the older brother who claims he once saw a real bishop. Someone whispers, "By all that is foul," and now the truce is shattered. The room erupts, but not in chaos, but in vocal despair. The dog, unbothered, shifts and wags its tail twice, stirring the air with mechanical efficiency. You swear it's smirking. You curse softly into your straw, wondering how a creature with no shame can hold such power over a shared space. Someone lights a stub of candle and waves it like a holy relic. It makes no difference. The dog has claimed this square of the house as its own. You consider escape. The barn isn't far, and at least there you know the smells come from cows. Cows have integrity. Their emissions are expected, almost poetic. The scent of livestock is earthy, honest. This is personal. But the night is cold, the ground is wet. And last time you slept in the barn, you woke up with a chicken on your head and an unexplained bruise shaped like France. So you remain. You suffer. A foot thumps against your shin. You retaliate with a knee to someone's rib cage. It's done lovingly, of course. Familial combat. Blanket revenge. The smell lingers, wedging itself into the space behind your eyes. You try breathing through your mouth, but quickly regret that strategy. The taste is worse than the scent, like boiled cabbage filtered through betrayal. Eventually, the dog settles again. It gives one final sigh, part contentment, part warning, and curls into a ball of malicious fluff. You glare at it through the dim light, your eyes narrowing into slits of quiet resentment. You hope it dreams of baths. The room drifts back toward silence. The original pact, once shattered, is slowly reassembled. No one speaks of what happened. You all choose amnesia. It's better that way. You shift beneath the blankets, testing for residual stench pockets. Your nose is numb. Your dignity is dampened. But you've survived. You whisper an unconvincing prayer to Saint Odorless and close your eyes. And then, barely a whisper, a final fart flutters into existence. A punctuation mark at the end of a very specific kind of sentence. You do not know who did it. You do not care. You're too tired to break the pact again. You turn over, bury your face in the straw, and accept your fate. This is family. This is night. This is the fart truce. You lean over the basin with the same defeated posture usually reserved for funerals and harvest taxes. The water stares back at you, murky and congealing in that way that suggests it's been sentient for a few hours now and is only moments from demanding voting rights. It smells faintly of moss, deeply of disappointment, and possibly, if your nose isn't lying, turnip stew. No one remembers if it's the same water you used earlier or if it's been repurposed from the soup pot, but either way, it's your fate now. You've committed. You're here. You're going to wash your face. You scoop the water with both hands. The chill bites instantly, like an insult thrown by someone shorter than you, but still emotionally devastating. It slaps your cheeks with the force of a wronged mother and lingers like a sermon about modesty. The first splash doesn't cleanse so much as humble. You feel your pores retract out of shame, and your eyebrows reconsider their life choices. The second splash is worse. It's colder somehow, as if the water has gained knowledge of your regrets and is now weaponizing it. Your skin begins to sting in a way that makes you wonder if you've been cursed, or if this is just what happens when you share your basin with 6 other people and a goat named Edith. Probably both. You rub your face with the desperation of someone trying to erase not just dirt but memory. It doesn't work. The grime remains. So do the memories. The rag is gone. No one says where. There's just a vague sense in the room that it was last seen near the fire, being used either as a pot holder or a chew toy. Maybe both. You pivot to the next best thing, the curtain. The curtain is thin, frayed, and smells like secrets. You've had beef with it ever since it tried to fall on you during that windstorm last month. You hold it in your hands now, triumphant, like an old enemy finally caught unarmed. You wipe your face with it, slow and defiant, knowing full well that it doesn't want this either. The fabric scratches across your skin like the sigh of a tired ghost. It absorbs little but judges much. No one in the house protests. Your sister watches you with mild curiosity from across the room, her face half covered in what you hope is clay and not dried pudding. Your mother doesn't even look up. The curtain was a gift from your aunt, the one with opinions and 3 teeth, and no one has liked it since. It never blocked light, it never hung straight, and it always smelled vaguely like despair. Tonight, it finally serves a purpose. You dry your face with long, dragging strokes, making sure to press it into your chin like you're trying to squeeze out youth. All you get is damp linen and the faint scent of mildew. You breathe. The cold water has cleared your mind in the way a shovel clears snow, forcefully, unwillingly. You feel cleaner, though you know better than to believe it. Cleanliness, in this house, is an illusion maintained by dim lighting and the refusal to sniff too closely. But your face no longer itches with the same fervor. Your eyelids no longer feel glued shut by dust and apathy. You count that as a win. The curtain hangs limp in your hand now, heavier than it should be, as if absorbing your shame. You pat it once, as a gesture of thanks or apology, you're not sure which, and return it to the window with a reverence typically reserved for relics or slightly spoiled cheese. It droops as if resenting its new role as a communal facecloth. You do not blame it. Someone coughs behind you. A child, possibly yours, possibly someone else's. You don't check. Children are like drafts in this house. Omnipresent, poorly managed, and usually sticky. You sigh and look into the basin one last time. The water is rippling, slowly, rhythmically, like it knows what you've done and forgives nothing. You pour a bit out the side, discreetly, hoping no one sees. You tell yourself it's to lighten the load for tomorrow's washing. You know it's to avoid making eye contact with your reflection again. You sit back on your heels, damp-faced and existential. Your cheeks tingle like they've been lectured. Your nose runs slightly, but there's no cloth left to fix that. You sniff and let fate handle it. The fire crackles behind you. The straw bed creaks ominously, and the night folds in around the house like a heavy wool blanket. Scratchy, necessary, and filled with the smell of generations. You touch your face one last time. It's still you. Slightly cleaner, slightly colder, slightly more resigned. But you're ready. Sleep waits, like an awkward uncle at a wedding, eager to hug, unsure of your name, and always smelling faintly of ale and cloves. You rise, towelless, victorious in your own damp way. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Or you'll pretend you did. Same thing, really. Your grandmother appears at the doorway like a weathered specter of authority, holding a chipped clay bowl with steam curling out of it like the spirits of the damned. She doesn't speak. She just stares at your feet, then at the bowl, then at your feet again, her gaze a slow curse whispered in triplicate. You know what's coming. You've seen this ritual before. You've heard the screams. It's time, she says, with the finality of someone announcing a public hanging or a second marriage. You sit on the edge of the hearth with the resigned posture of a man about to be mildly baptized against his will. The bowl is placed in front of you like an offering or a trap. It smells like boiled bitterness and faint regrets. Steam rises lazily, as if unsure whether it wants to participate. Floating inside the bowl are nettles, angry and prickled, like they died mad and planned to haunt you. It'll draw out the bad humors, she croaks, lowering herself beside you with joints that crack like old wood under stress. And if you scream, it means it's working. You'd like to argue. You'd like to ask what, exactly, a humor island, or whether this qualifies as bathing, legally, but you know better. Grandmother survived 3 husbands, a plague, and the time your cousin Bertha tried to baptize a pig. She cannot be reasoned with. You lower your feet slowly, cautiously, like you're testing lava for sincerity. The heat strikes first, sharp and sudden, like a slap from an aunt you forgot to visit. Your toes curl in rebellion, but it's too late. They're submerged. The nettles stir as if woken. You flinch. You whimper. A single hiss escapes your lips. Grandmother beams. There it is, she says, as though you've just passed some sacred threshold of pain and piety. Let it soak. Let the plants know your shame. You want to ask how plants could possibly know shame. You want to ask a lot of things, like why the water is suspiciously green, or whether the chunk floating by your ankle used to be edible. But the heat has now reached your ankles, and your brain is short-circuiting in protest. You make a sound that could be a laugh or a sob. You hope she doesn't notice. She does. Means it's working, she repeats, nodding like a priest overseeing an exorcism. That's the devil's leaking out. You glance down. The water is definitely turning a different color. Not metaphorically, visibly. There's sediment where sediment should not be. Something slithers past your foot, probably a leaf, possibly your guilt. You close your eyes. Tell me if you feel dizzy, she says, poking a spoon into the liquid like she's tasting stew. That's how you know it's pulling the rot from your soul. You do feel dizzy, but you suspect that's from holding your breath for 2 full minutes to avoid the smell. The scent has evolved. It's no longer just herbs and regret, but something else now, something deeper, like ancient socks and confessions made under duress. You wonder briefly if the smell can stain your memory. Grandmother hums a tune, off-key and vaguely threatening. It sounds like a lullaby reimagined by someone who's been banned from 3 villages for enthusiastic potioning. She begins to rock slightly, which is never a good sign. You shift your weight and feel the nettles rearrange themselves under your skin. One pricks your heel, another your toe. Your body screams, but only internally, because to do so out loud would fuel her triumph. You won't give her the satisfaction, but then she lifts the bowl while your feet are still in it. You let out an involuntary shriek. She grins like a cat that's won a theological debate. I told you, she says, the way someone might say, I predicted the sun would rise, as if she personally controls the laws of nature and pain. Your left foot was holding on to envy. I could tell by the way the nettles danced. You don't even know what that means. You're not sure she does either. But she nods sagely and mutters something in a language that may or may not exist. The water ripples in reply. You don't ask questions anymore. Not since the incident with the vinegar poultice and the family chicken. Eventually, the heat numbs you, or perhaps you've transcended to a plane of suffering that no longer includes nerve endings. Either way, your feet are limp and steaming like sad dumplings. You can't tell if you feel better or just empty, like a barrel that's been drained of both wine and purpose. Grandmother removes the bowl with ceremonial care and pours its contents directly into the garden. You hear the plants hiss. A beetroot wilts. She cackles. Tomorrow, she says, rising with a grace that belies her age, we do the ears. Can't have demons setting up camp behind the lobes. You don't reply. You just nod, staring at your feet like they betrayed you in a previous life. The skin is red, puckered, and slightly floral. You think you see a nettle embedded in your toe like a splinter of ancient wisdom. You leave it there. She totters away, humming her unsettling hymn, leaving you alone with your thoughts and 2 mildly exercised feet. You curl up near the hearth, still warm from the ordeal. The dog sniffs your foot and recoils. You consider that a compliment. The house settles into night, creaking and sighing like it too has soaked in cursed tea. You close your eyes and pray to sleep before your grandmother returns with something labeled, for the elbows. You kneel on the cold floor, straw scratching your knees and a splinter negotiating its way into your shin, and try to remember how prayers are supposed to begin. Gratitude, you think. Something about gratitude. You close your eyes, hands pressed together with the earnestness of a person who already knows they're not going to make it past the first sentence without apologizing for something. The words tumble around in your skull like turnips in a cart, and all you manage at first is a whisper that sounds more like sorry than thank you. You try again. It still comes out as sorry. You accept it. Sorry is safer anyway. Your breath fogs in front of you. The room is heavy with smoke from the hearth, heavy with the smell of wool and onions and unwashed feet, heavy with expectation. You hear your brother rolling over in bed, sighing theatrically like sleep is something he invented. The dog snorts and licks itself. You focus harder, mumbling half a sentence of thanks for bread, or maybe for surviving Tuesday. Your mind goes blank after that, so you repeat sorry 3 times for balance. Behind you, a cough erupts. It's not a polite cough, not the kind someone makes to clear their throat. This one rattles the air, sharp and wet, like a sack of gravel being poured through a funnel. It keeps going, each bark louder, until it feels less like a bodily function and more like a prophecy. Your eyes open mid-prayer. You glance toward the bed. Your sister sits up, clutching her blanket, glaring at the source of the noise. Someone mutters, "The pox," with the grim relish of a person who enjoys announcing disasters. Your stomach drops. You try to focus on prayer again, but the words don't come. All you can picture is pustules. Pustules on faces. Pustules on goats. Pustules spreading across the village like gossip with legs. You whisper faster now, not bothering with thank yous, not even bothering with sorries. Just words, just sounds. Half of them Latin you don't know, half of them nonsense syllables you hope sound holy. You end abruptly, like cutting a thread with your teeth, and clap your hands together once in the dark, as if to seal the deal. Another cough. Louder. Longer. You wince. The rest of the room stirs. Your cousin groans and pulls the itchy blanket over his head, muttering something about, "If it's my time, let me at least dream of turnips." Your grandmother, from her corner, wheezes in a way that might be laughter or might be preparation for her own funeral. She mutters, "Good lungs." That one. And falls silent again. You shuffle back to bed, knees aching, fingers still twitching from the urgency of your failed prayer. You curl beneath the holy blanket and squeeze your eyes shut, willing sleep to come quickly enough to smother the fear. But the coughing continues. Each hack shakes the walls, rattles the window frame, echoes through the straw like it's climbing inside your ear. You try plugging one ear with your finger, but it only makes the sound more dramatic in the other. The smell of smoke thickens, mingling with the sour edge of damp wool and the faint, terrifying suggestion of illness. You breathe through your mouth, hoping to dodge contagion through sheer stubbornness. Your sister whispers a half prayer of her own, but it collapses into a yawn. She decides faith can wait until morning. You think of the priest's last sermon, about sin creeping in at night like rats. You wonder if coughing counts as sin. You decide it probably does. You whisper one last sorry, just in case, and tuck your head deeper into the cheese-scented blanket where the smell is bad but familiar. The comfort of known suffering. The cough fades after a while, replaced by restless shifting, a few mutters, and eventually the steady rise and fall of uneven breathing. You lie awake, pulse jittering, convinced every sound is the herald of plague. The rafters creak. Someone snores. A flea bites your wrist with delicate precision. You count your heartbeats like rosary beads, but lose track after 20. When Jeffrey the dog lets out a sigh that smells worse than confession day. Finally, you slip into half sleep, the kind where prayers blur into dreams and dreams blur into worries. Your last thought before drifting off is simple, desperate, and poorly constructed. Please let tomorrow still have bread. Please let tomorrow still have me. You lie on your side in the dim half-dark, listening to the last crackles of the hearth giving up. The blankets cling to you like damp enemies. The straw beneath pricks in uneven protest, and your body chooses this exact moment to remind you that you itch, not in one place, not in any way manageable, everywhere. A creeping, restless itch that travels your skin like a rumor with legs. You try to ignore it at first. Pretend you are strong, holy, above such mortal inconveniences. You clench your jaw, close your eyes tighter, and tell yourself sleep will come if you simply don't acknowledge the treachery of your own flesh. But your thigh begins to tickle, then your arm, then your neck. It's as if the fleas have held a meeting and voted unanimously to test your faith tonight. You scratch your forearm. Just a quick drag of your nails. Nothing dramatic. The relief is instant, euphoric, sinful. You sigh. The bed creaks. From the other side of the room, a muffled voice, heavy with sleep, groans. "Stop it," you whisper back. "I'm not doing anything." Which is technically a lie, but a holy one, a survival lie. You scratch again, this time at your calf. Subtle, slow. The itch migrates to your shoulder. You roll onto your back, hoping movement might shake it loose. Instead, it multiplies. Now your ribs demand attention, then your scalp, then a mysterious patch near your ankle you didn't even know had sensation left. You try scratching with restraint, small motions under the blanket, but restraint has no power here. Soon your hand is traveling in restless arcs, scratching and clawing, as if you're tilling the soil of your own body. The straw beneath you rustles, the blanket jerks, and the dog huffs once in protest. Your sister shifts beside you and mutters, "If you wake the lice, I'll kill you." You freeze, hand mid-scratch. Then the itch flares on your back, just between your shoulder blades, unreachable, mocking you with its geography. You twist, contort, rub yourself against the straw like a goat against a fence post. The friction burns. The itch laughs. You stop again, breath sharp, sweat dampening your neck. Maybe it's not fleas, maybe it's sweat, or guilt, or the punishment of saints displeased by your half-prayer earlier. You consider confession, but confession doesn't solve itching. Only scratching solves itching. You know this. Everyone knows this. You give in fully now, dragging your nails down your arms, your chest, your legs. The sound is frantic, primal. The straw shifts violently. Someone groans again. A sharp kick hits your shin. "Stop it," your brother hisses this time, sharper. Awake enough to be cruel. You whisper back, "I can't." "Then die quietly," he mutters, turning over. The itch is relentless. It comes in waves, a rhythm, a pulse. Every time you scratch one place, another flares up, a cruel game of chase orchestrated by invisible tormentors. Your scalp tingles, your ankle burns, your belly twitches. You thrash under the blankets, half possessed, half desperate, praying that your noise doesn't escalate into a family brawl. You pause long enough to breathe, chest heaving. The room smells of wool, sweat, and betrayal. You pull the cheese blanket higher, hoping suffocation might distract your nerves. It doesn't. The itch finds you still. You whisper a bargain into the darkness. "If you stop, I'll never steal carrots again. I'll listen at prayers. I'll even scrub with soap." The itch answers by flaring across both arms at once. You nearly scream. You kick off the blanket entirely, hoping the cold will numb you. For a brief second, it works. The night air brushes your skin, sharp and biting, and the itch retreats. Relief spreads through you like stolen honey. You close your eyes, grateful. Then the cold deepens, sinking into your bones, and suddenly you are freezing, shivering, and the itch returns, stronger, angrier, as if punishing you for thinking you could win. You dive back under the blankets, clutching them to your chin, body squirming like a trapped eel. Your nails find your thigh again, and you rake hard, almost drawing blood. It feels good. Too good. You stop, terrified by your own enjoyment. The silence of the room presses heavy. Everyone else is asleep now, breathing in their uneven rhythms, coughing softly, sighing into their dreams. Only you remain awake, locked in battle with your own skin. You stare into the dark and accept the truth. You will never know peace. Not tonight. Not while the fleas feast. Not while your sweat stings. Not while guilt makes your nerves dance. You scratch once more, deliberately slow, savoring the pain, then tuck your hands beneath your body to trap them. The itch hums on, patient, waiting. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you will tell yourself it was only a bad dream. But tonight, the war is real. You lie on your back, limbs twisted into an arrangement that would horrify any physician. Though to be fair, most physicians already believe your humors are unbalanced and your soul a little crooked. The blankets cling unevenly, wool at your neck, holes at your knees, and the faint perfume of cheese hovering near your chin. You itch, you stink, you ache, yet for the first time tonight, the house is still. Your eyes flutter shut. The fire whispers its last sigh, hissing softly as damp wood gives up. Shadows curl along the walls like tired cats, stretching, then settling. Someone snores beside you, a long, wheezy note that stumbles halfway through before starting again. The dog grumbles in his sleep, chasing rabbits or demons. For once, you don't mind. These sounds are ordinary, the noises of survival, familiar chaos. Your skin is still sticky, a mixture of sweat, dirt, and nettle residue that clings like a curse. The flea bites sting faintly, constellations of irritation drawn across your arms and legs. You scratch once, lazily, and then let it go. You can't fight forever. Fleas win every battle in the end. You inhale. The room smells like ash, onions, wet wool, and faintly of something unmentionable near the chamber pot. But beneath all that, faint and fleeting, you catch the warmth of bodies crammed close together, the strange reassurance of shared suffering. It is awful, yes, but it is yours. Your thoughts drift. You think of water, clear and endless, not the murky basin water, but the kind you've only heard about in stories. Streams that sparkle, fountains that never smell like goats. You imagine plunging into it, head to toe, emerging clean, radiant, unrecognizable. The dream feels impossible, which makes it sweeter. The rooster has not crowed yet. The night is still yours. The hours ahead are short and precious, even if they will be filled with twitching, scratching, and your brother's inexplicable habit of kicking in his sleep. You pull the itchy blanket higher, feel it scratch your chin, and accept the bargain. This is comfort. Not real comfort, but enough to trick your brain. Your grandmother coughs once in the corner, muttering to herself about demons in the rafters. You smile faintly, too tired to be alarmed. Even the rafters deserve company, you suppose. Your body begins to sink, heavy with the weight of the day. Soil on your hands, smoke in your lungs, turnips in your stomach, prayer half forgotten on your lips. Every muscle loosens. Every nerve finally releases its grip. You don't notice when the fleas regroup for another midnight feast, or when the curtain sways with the draft, or when your sister shifts and mutters about Roger, her imaginary lice friend. None of it matters anymore. Sleep drapes itself over you, careless and absolute. You are unclean. You are sore. You are slightly damp. And yet, you are oddly proud. Somehow, impossibly, you fall asleep. Welcome to medieval hygiene.